introduce more selection statements, and then we will start to introduce loop in the, I hope, in the next half of today's lesson. So today we're going to introduce two other things that can help us to do selection in C. The first one is called conditional expression, and the second is switch statement. So let's start with the first one. So C have a conditional expression. To write a conditional expression, we need to use a conditional operator. So this operator can let an expression to produce one of the two values, depending on the value of a conditions. So I know this sentence is a bit hard to understand, so I will provide you other example in the later slide, so you will have a better understanding of this. But before I introduce the other example, the first thing is that I need to let you know how to understand this entire conditional expression and this conditional operator, because this operator is more complicated than the operator we solved previously. So the conditional operator actually have two symbols. These two symbols together are one conditional operator. So the two symbol is question mark here and the colon symbol here. And these two symbols must be used together to form a correct conditional operator. So this is the general form of the conditional operator. So let's check out the meaning one by one. So actually, you don't really need to use conditional operator to achieve these things. You can also use if and else to achieve the same effect. However, conditional expression is, I would say, it's very useful expression. Even in the modern programming language like Python and R, they still use this conditional expression, something like this. So I think it is good to know these kind of things. And actually, we can also use the conditional expression in C. So to understand what this expression means, the simplest way is that what this expression means is if expression 1 is true, then do expression 2, else do expression 3. So let's check out the step more carefully. So this conditional expression will be evaluated in the following stage, in the following steps. So in the first step, the expression 1, expr1, these expressions will be evaluated first. So we will run this expression 1 first. And after we run this expression, we will get the return value, right? So depends on the return value of expression 1, we will decide whether we want to do expression 2 or 3. So in the first condition, if the return value of expression 1 is not 0, so that means that the expression 1 is true. Then if expression 1 is true, or the return value is not 0, then the expression 2, we put it here, will be evaluated. And the return value of expression 2 will be the value of the entire conditional expression. So that is the first situation where expression 1 returns true. And in the second conditions, in the second situation is that if the expression 1's value is 0, if the expression 1 returns false, then what happens is expression 3 instead of expression 2 will be evaluated, and the value of expression 3 will be the value of the entire conditional expression. So that is basically how this conditional expression is executed. So let's check out some example here. So this is we have some code here, and in the first part we use an if-else to achieve the same thing with this printf. So for the most of time, printf can be benefit from this conditional expression because you only need to write down one line and you can do the same things with this chunk of code. So in this case, so let's check out the if-else first to understand what we want to do here. So in this fragment of the code, we compared I and j, right? We want to know whether I is larger than j. And if I is larger than j, then what we want to do is to print out the value of I. But if I is not larger than j, then we want to print out the value of j. So basically what I want to do is to print out the larger value based on the comparison between I and j. So we can do that using this chunk of if-else. However, we can also do the same thing using this line. So we can see in this line, we have the conditional expression here in the printf function, right? The code of printf. And in this case, let's check out the conditional expression first. So in this case, the expression 1 is whether I is larger than j, right? And we know that if I is larger than j, then the return value of expression 1 will be 1. So that is true. So if the return value is 1, is true, then we need to evaluate expression 2. And in this case, what we put in the expression 2 is I. So I itself can also be an expression, and the return value of I itself is the value of I. So that is why if I is larger than j, then the entire conditional expression will return I, the value of I. So that what we print out is the value of I. In the other case, if j is larger than I, then the return value of the entire conditional expression is j, because j is at the expression 3. So that is why if j is larger than I or j is not smaller than I, then we will print out the value j. So I just find out I'm not precise when I'm trying to explain here. So here it's not just print out the larger value here, because if j is equal to I, then this program will still print out j, right? Because what we compare is whether I is larger than j. So if j is equal to I, this expression will also be false, and then the value of j will be print out. So that is what this program's fragment want to do. So you can see if you know the conditional expression, you can shorten your code, and you can write your code more efficiently. So the next one is Slido. So I just want to know whether you guys understand the conditional expressions. So again, the question is really simple here. What is the output message of this program? So in this program, the output is the results of answer 1 and answer 2. So we have two integer variables, and we have four integer variables, I, j, answer 1, answer 2. And then we stored the results, return value of this conditional expression to answer 1, and the results of the second conditional expression to answer 2. So your job is to decide what will be the final value stored inside answer 1 and answer 2. So let's wait until we have 30 submissions. Okay, very good. So let's check out the result. Great, that's very good. So around 90% of the submission choose the correct one. So the result is 2 and 1. So I guess because we have a really high correct rate, so I guess I don't need to explain why the correct answer is 2 and 1. And again, if you choose the incorrect answer and you don't know why the correct answer is 2 and 1, please feel free to come to me after the class or during the break, we can discuss about this. So after introduce the conditional expression, the next thing I want to introduce is switch statement. So switch statement is another selection statement that we can use in C. So let's assume a situation here. So if in this case, I want to do a series of comparisons to determine which of the condition I'm in right now. For example, in here, I want to print out the correct message based on the grade the student received. For example, if the grade equals to 4, then I want to print out the excellent information. But if the grade is equal to 3, then this is good. And then you can see we have different message for different grades. So to do that, we can still do that using if and else. We just need to write a lot of if and else, a lot of cascaded if statement, right? But it is okay, but sometimes it is too much, and sometimes it's hard to understand. So C offered another way to help us to make this series of comparisons easier. So what C do is that C provides switch statements, and this is easier to read, and the execution of switch statements in this case is faster than the else if statement. So in this case, you can see that we write the switch like this, and we write down the value we want to test inside the parentheses of switch. And then based on different value here, we put different case here. And inside each case, we put down the statements that will be evaluated given different case. So you can see we have different case here. So I will explain the general form in the later slide, but now let's just focus on these examples. So in this case, we have grade here, and we have case from 4 to 0 here. We have a default here, and we can compare these switch statements with the if-else statement here. So you can see different message. Is in the different case of the switch statement, and we also have the information, the message for the final else. The final else is for the situation that the grade is not in the range here. Then it will print out the illegal grades here. And also we have a case called default. And in the default case, it means that we don't have the value of the grades do not fall into one of the cases here, so that we will go to the default case and print out the message here. So if the value of grades equals to 4, if it matches 4, what happens is that the statements in the case 4 will be evaluated, so that it will print out excellent here. And after excellent, you can see we have another statement called break. So what this break statement will do is that it will make the execution float jump out of the switch statements. So what does this mean? So it means that after it runs break, then our computer will not continue to evaluate the statements inside different case. It will just directly start from here and then jump out from the entire switch statement and continue to run the statement after switch statement. And the other thing is that if the value of grades don't match any number from 0 to 4, like here, then what will happen is that the programs in this switch statement will go to default case, and then it will evaluate the statements inside the default case and then break. So after checking this example, let's check out the general form of the switch statement. So for the switch statement, you need to write down the name of switch, right? SWITCH. And then we need to put a parenthesis after switch. And inside the parenthesis, we need to put something we call controlling expressions inside the parenthesis. So what is the purpose of the controlling expression? So in this case, the controlling expression is grade here. And actually, the controlling expression can be more complicated. So the controlling expression, in the most of the time, is an integer expression, like grade, or you can have a grade plus 1, grade plus 2. And one limitation is that we cannot use floating point number in the controlling expressions. We can also not use the one strings in the controlling expression, because you can see in the case here, the number after the case are all integer. So that is why we cannot put the floating point variable, so number, in the controlling expression. What can we put in the controlling expression? Need to be integer expression. The expression return integer value. Then after checking the switch and the controlling expression, let's go inside the switch statement. So we have the curly braces here, right? So inside the curly braces, they are the cases statement. So in the cases statement, we need to write down CASE here, case here, and after the case, we need to write down the constant expressions. So constant expressions means that it can only contain constant. So we cannot add the variables. Oh, there's a mosquito here. It's pretty annoying. Okay, I hope it's not. Okay, so the constant expressions, what is constant expressions? So 5 itself is a constant expression because 5 is constant. 5 plus 1, 5 plus 2 is also constant expression. However, if we add a variable n and we write down n plus 10, although n can be integer variable, but n itself is not constant. So this is illegal to put in a constant expression. So after we have the case and constant expression, we put a semicolon here, and we can put multiple statements for each case. So the statement here can be any number of statements. And what is interesting here is that unlike the if-else statement, because in the if-else, if we want to put multiple statements, we need to create a compound statement, right? We need to use the curly braces and then put multiple statements in it. However, in the switch statement inside every case, we can directly put multiple statements here. So we don't need braces here. And the other thing is that in the most case, the last statement inside each case, inside each group, are normally break statement, just like the example we see here. And I will explain what in the most case we need to put the break as the last statement in each case. So there are also some rules we need to pay attention to when we use switch statements. The first rule is that we cannot have the same case label inside the same switch statement. So that means that duplicate case labels are not allowed. In this case, we have one case 4. So that means that we cannot have another case 4 in the switch statement. It needs to be other number. And the second thing is that the order of these cases doesn't matter. So we don't really need to start from case 4, 3, 2, 1. We can start from 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 3, 2, 4, something like that. So the order doesn't really matter. And the other thing is that the default case doesn't need to come last. So we can put default here. So default don't always need to be at the last case. Because if we put it here, it doesn't change the behavior of switch, because switch just evaluate the number of the control expression here, and then go to the case that have the label of the case match the return value of the controlling expression. So we can put the default here as well. So just like I said in the second rules, the order of the cases doesn't matter. So another thing we can use statements, switch statement, is that we can also use the switch statement like this. So we can have several case label all together, and they can precede the same group of statements. So in this case, in each switch statement here, what I want to do is that if the student have the grade from 1 to 4, then I want to print the message passing, and only if the student gets the grades equal to 0, then I print out the message falling here. So in this case, I can write down the switch statement like this. So in this case, if the student get the grade 4 to 1, then if it is 4, then because we don't have any statement here, so it would continue to go to 3 to 1, and then print out the printf we put in the case 1, and then break from the switch statement. And in this case, you can see that we don't have the default case, right? So if the default case in the switch statement is missing, then what the switch statement will do is to continue run the next statement after switch. So the next statement might be something down here. So if the grade, for example, if the grade is the value 5, then we don't have the case for value 5, right? So in this case, then the switch will just jump out from the switch and then continue to run any other statement we put it here. So let's talk about the role of the break statement in the switch. So the break statement can help the program to break out of switch after finishing the statement in the match case. So in the same example here, if we have the grade equal to 3, then what will happen is that the grade will jump to the case 3, and then you will see there's no statement here, right? And then you will continue to go to the next line, that is case 2, and there's nothing here, then you will go to case 1. And in the case 1, you have one printf, so you will run the printf here, and then the second statement is break, so that you will evaluate break. And the function of break, or what the break can help us to do, is to break out of switch, right? Like I write it here. So what happens is that it will break out from the switch. So it will jump from this line to the line, the first line, right after switch statement. So that is the same for the other break here. So if we have the grade of 0 here, it will directly go to the case 0 here, print out the failing message, and then evaluate the break statement. So the break statement will let the program jump from this line to the line after switch statement. So that is why we need to have a break. So what happens if we forgot to add the break? So what happens is that the switch statement will continue run the statement for the next case. So let's check out the example here. So in this example, let's assume that if the value of grade is 3, so what happened here is that we have the switch and the grade is 3, so we'll jump to the case 3 here, and then print the good message, print the statement, evaluate the statement we put in the case 3. But in this case, we forgot to add the break. So what will happen is that it will continue to run case 2, and then evaluate the statement in the case 2, that is print the message average, and then case 1, case 0, and default. So if we run this switch, you will see the output message become something like this. So this is definitely what we want this statement to do, right? So please remember to add break. And if you check out your output is something like this, then you should probably know that you forgot to add break in the switch statement. So this is a very common error for beginners, maybe not just beginners, for programmers. If we program in C, this is a very common error for everyone. And so I will say, please always remember to put break after each case, unless you know what you are doing. For example, if you write down something like this, you don't need to, okay. I will say for the beginners, the rule of thumb is to remember always put the break after each case in the switch statement. Okay, so this is all the things for the selection statement 2. So we introduced the conditional expression, we introduced the switch statement, and we will have the break right now. And after the break, we will start the last lesson, that is loop. So please come back here